So as I mentioned before, there's two different websites that you might want to bookmark. This TDEC one is kind of like the background behind the scenes thing, but the one that we like to use the most is the hub page. So if you're in state parks, this one is really the most helpful for you. But also archaeology and natural areas, we would love to add some of your applications to here. You'll notice that I'm signed in at the top, and that means I can see things that are catered towards me. So if I go to the applications page, I get to see all sorts of different apps that have been made. So we set up sharing settings so that different people can see different things. The One Smart Park tool is locked down to just people within parks and conservation. Right now, not even the rest of TDEC, I think, can contribute to it or see it, but we could always expand that later. Some other fun tools, if you're looking to see who your local reps are, you can check out the stakeholder tool. You might be familiar with monthly tracking or submitting education programs, or you might just want to see where your cemeteries are or the Go Green program. Lots of great things. But the most important one is One Smart Park, and you won't see this until you log in because this stuff is locked down. So this is the online viewer to see everything that's going on with state parks. It is a really cool way to create a living history of the parks. You'll notice we got all these layers here. They're grayed for now, but as I zoom in, you get to start checking out what some of these parks are up to. The idea is everybody can use One Smart Park for different reasons. Even your own staff at your own park might have different ways of using and interacting with it. Maybe your maintenance folks are more into the utility side, and your interpretive folks are working on maybe a signage inventory to update interpretive panels. And other folks might be really into the resource management, doing invasive species or wildlife areas. There's a lot of awesome things with this. So I want to highlight Panther Creek real quick because they did a really cool job. They jumped in December this year and started really going after it. And so what you're looking at here is a handful of things. We had some basic stuff that came in automatically. We had the trails. That's some of our like foundational data sets. The rest of these we call statewide layers. So they occur throughout the state. And the reason we set these up is because we noticed every park was doing things a little bit differently. Some people were using Excel and Google Maps or Avenza to collect data, but oftentimes they kind of got siloed and stuck on just one person's device, or you had to email files back and forth, and there wasn't a lot of collaboration. So we created these statewide layers that everyone can collaborate to, and they have like quick, easy drop-down smart forms. So it's looking really cool over here. So what they were doing were boundary reviews. These are all the little green flags that are stationed around the park. And what's really fun about boundary reviews is two different types of them. So this is the boundary review layer, and there's a red flag and a green flag. The green flags are where you found boundary markers. So you found whether it's painted trees or signs, and so it's a way to go out and revisit your boundary. What's really nice is each one of these will tell you the visit date and what it was. So this was a post, and let's see what else we got in here. And the last time it was edited was on, or created basically, was December of 2023. What I could do is I could filter these results to show everything that's been visited within the last year, or maybe the last 5 years, once we have this kind of built out. And the idea is you'd see all the places where you haven't kind of revisited your boundary for a while. And the reason you might want to do that is because there could be boundary encroachments going on. So if we check out this layer, this is a kind of in the management realm of things. We've got some really nice developments down here in the water. I wouldn't mind having this spot. Looks like a really sweet pool and dock and all that. So they found some boundary markers, but they also found an encroachment that they've documented. And so they found an underground dog fence and flower pots that were located on that side of the fence. So that's no good. We don't want that. That's not fun. And so what's nice is that's documented. I can see it. The folks in Lands and Realty can see this right away. And you can kind of update this. So if you wanted to update, say there was communication between legal or email sent back and forth or communication with the landowner, you can actually add and make attachments to this for forever and kind of build out this one layer, this one point. So I don't want to go too deep into one without letting Leah take over in a few minutes to show you all the layers one by one. But we also have cultural resources that these folks have identified, and we're working with archaeology to kind of get a way of sharing our state park finds with them to help with their cataloging, and maybe vice versa, where we can kind of get a general idea of some of the known cultural sites that we have located around the park. All right, let me go to another park real quick. So over at Montgomery Bell, it's always fun to do this without the base map loading because then you really got to know where you're looking. Eric over there is using this for trail planning. So you'll notice that there's kind of a different symbology between the trails that are existing, these colored ones, and this thicker dotted line. These are new proposed trails. They're doing some, I think, accessible trails going here. And he's also routing out proposed features like proposed parking and proposed signage. Leah's going to show you how to mark a proposed trail or maybe a decommissioned or a reroute, and also how to show proposed park assets that are in there. So it's a great way of planning a park. And speaking of planning a park, there's no better example than heading on over to Middle Fork Bottoms, where the manager over there has planned out an entire park from scratch. A lot of this, obviously, they inherited from the West Tennessee River Basin, but his vision about where facilities might be located can all be plotted on here. This is kind of your artscape where you get to imagine the future of your park. And it doesn't have to be just locked down to your general area. Your influence goes beyond the park. So whether you're Reelfoot Lake and you're trying to make sure you're monitoring the eagle nests that contribute to your tourism for your local economy and some of the things that you do tours on around the park, your boundary and your influence stretches beyond the park. So it's really cool. So a couple cool things about this. I'm going to fly on over to Henry Horton for a second. I think we have some people on the call related to this. So what you can do is you can use this web tool to edit and create new features at any point. And you can also just do a quick map. So if you were saying, hey, we're going to do some type of like maybe a cleanup or a weed wrangle or something on here, you could draw out drop points and all that and quickly print out a map. And whatever map you print out is also geo-enabled so that you can use it on a Venza map if you upload it there. The last part I want to show you guys is probably the most powerful, which is the table. So the table shows everything that's been documented if you don't want to look at it in a map form. So when I go to signage here, we're going to have all the different signs that people have been collecting. 562 since we introduced this back in November. So that's really cool. This is not like a standardized approach where we're saying everybody needs to go inventory their signs. We've got some parks like at Natchez Trace that are doing working with the WMA and Forest to get uniform signage going on. So it's a really important thing for them to do. But you'll notice that having these different fields like condition, material, status, by having little drop downs about what these are, it makes it so that we don't have like typos and we can sort things easily, but it also makes it so we can filter. So if I were to go to this filter button over here, I can filter signage. So I want to say I'm looking for ones that are the condition is, or maybe is it any of, that lets you select multiple, missing or destroyed or in poor condition. Those are probably the ones that need replacement. And turn the filter on, and now we've gone from 560 down to 73 signs so far. Okay, that's great, but how do I know which park this is at? Well, luckily you can add more filters. You can kind of keep building and growing these on top of each other. So we have park I'm going to use Chickasaw for an example. I know Lindsay over there has done a lot of signage inventories, and this lets her know we got 10 signs that need replacement and the location. And she even has done some really cool text things here where she's trying to figure out or show that this one goes this way, and we need a sign that's pointing left, and the text should say RV campground. So what does that look like? Over at Chickasaw, I'm going to turn off a couple layers so that you can toggle these on and off as much as you'd like. And I'm left with a couple remaining park signage here. If I can get you a better base map going. So if I turn that filter back off again, we'll see more signs show up. And now we've filtered it down to just the ones that we basically need replacement. And you can export any of this to a CSV, or even to GeoJSON, which is more like a GIS type mapping file. You can do statistics, but basically you've got these big tables of data. So even with the boundary review, we have 398 documented so far. It lets you drill down to your specific park or certain things if you're doing a project or even a date created and see what's on the map and in the table. So with that, Leah, do you think there's anything else I should cover on here before we dive into the app?
I think you got it all.
Awesome. All right. I'll let Leah pull up the tablet and I'll make a note on that too. So basically you can use this on your phone, you can use it on the computer, or if you've got a tablet, all of these work, Android or iPhone. All you need to do is get that app on your phone and she'll show you what that app looks like real quick before we dive in.
All right, so once you download ArcGIS field maps on your device, you'll have a screen that looks like this. It says maps at the top. You'll likely have access to less maps than you're seeing on my screen, but the one you really want to see is called One Smart Park. If you don't see that, just use the search bar at the top and search One Smart Park and it should come up. Just a little housekeeping I like to do before starting out. If you push the blue profile icon in the top left, it's going to open up your profile settings. I always like to make sure that under General Auto Sync is turned on. That just means if I ever go offline, it'll automatically sync my data up to the cloud when I get back to cell service or Wi-Fi, so I don't have to worry about manually doing that. All right, we're gonna jump into One Smart Park. As you can see, I'm sitting right here at my house with that little blue dot that shows your location. But for today, we're gonna act like it's a visitor center and this is a park. Just a little tour of the app. If you click the top right stack of pancakes icon, that's gonna be your layers list. This is where you'll turn layers on and off by using these toggles. You'll see that some of our layers are defaulted as off. So if you don't see something on your map, always check your layers list to make sure it's turned on. So I'm going to turn on that trail and event issue/damages layer because we'll use that in a bit. You can also filter here. So just like Andrew was doing online, you can click the icon to the left of the layer name and you can say sign type is interpretive or informational. And if I do that, it's going to filter out all of the informational signs from my map. So this is really great if you want to focus in on a certain type or a certain field on a layer. I'm going to reset that, click done, and X out. If you ever want to change the base map, this is an option when you're on cell service or Wi-Fi, but not when you're offline because it's downloaded to your device. But I'm on Wi-Fi right now, so I'll show you. You'll just click the ... at the top and click base map, and now you have access to all of these wonderful base maps, depending on what you're working on. All right. The best button on here is the blue plus button at the bottom right. That's how you collect new data. So I'm going to click that. It's going to pull up this long list of everything you can possibly collect. There's probably over 500 options at this point, so I highly recommend using this filter bar at the top to search for what you're looking for. If something doesn't show up like bathroom, maybe try restroom. It might be listed under a different name. So let's first start with vegetation and invasive species treatment. I saw in the survey or the poll, a lot of people were interested in this. So I'm just gonna type in veg and you'll see that layer pop up at the top. I'm gonna click on that layer and it's gonna want me to draw a polygon. So if I was in the field, I'd click the ... and choose start streaming, and I would walk that perimeter as I treated it, or maybe afterwards if I'm going a lot of zigzagging. We want that polygon to show what we've treated in total. So you would click start streaming, you would walk that boundary, and then you click stop streaming, and then you have a perfect polygon like you already see on my map. The other option is to do it manually. So as I'm sitting here at the visitor center, I'm going to add a point. I'm going to walk a little, add a point, walk a little, add a point. And you can see I'm just moving the crosshairs on my map, and it's dropping a point under that crosshairs. All right. So now I have a polygon that I like. I'm going to scroll down. For all of our layers, you can take photos or attach files. So for this, I might take before and after pictures and attach those to this polygon. I might attach any kind of reference to treatments that I'm doing, anything that's helpful to you. A lot of our fields in these forms are optional. We have very few required fields. So really just fill in the data that's helpful to your workflows. Some of them can be quite overwhelming, but again, just use whatever is helpful to you. This particular layer was built out with the help of natural areas, so you can get very specific in the type of treatment and the weather conditions and who was helping and that kind of thing. But I'll go through some simple way to fill this out. I'm going to choose a park name. I can give it a unit name if I have one for it. We're going to say that State Parks was leading this treatment. I treated it on April 16th today. The primary target species, it's going to pull up a list of all of our exotic and invasive species in Tennessee. You can search by scientific or common name. So for this, I'm going to search English ivy. And if I have more than one species that I'm treating, I can say I have one more, and it's going to give me another list. So let's say Tree of Heaven. And then here under treatment method, I can say if I'm pulling, spraying, etc. These are some weather conditions I can get into, what type of herbicide I'm using, how many crew hours were required, and more details. You can see that you automatically calculate the treated acreage. So now we know what's been treated acreage-wise, what herbicide was used, and it's really great for tracking metrics for IPPs. And just seeing a historic reference over time of what's happening at your park. So maybe you start to see those populations shrink and you know your methods are working, or maybe you're not seeing that and you need to try a different method. What's really great about this, I'm going to click submit so you can see it on the map. If natural areas is working at your park, you can see their data and they can see your data. So it's really great for content sharing between divisions. And you can see overlap between different species or different treatments. Okay.
And yeah, and with
Next.
that, I wanted to say too, we talked about being able to filter earlier. One really thing you could do is if you're getting pretty scientific about treating invasives, you could filter for the treatment type or the treatment chemical. Like, so I could say, I want to see only the things that I treated with glyphosate. And then you could route to them on field maps, go out in the field and look to say, okay, maybe that was the most effective or wasn't, or maybe I use a foliar spray or I did pulling. So you filter all the treatments that you have done. Maybe on Weed Wrangle, you had everybody do something differently. You could see which one was the most effective.
All right. And then let's create a sign point. So I'm going to click the blue plus button. I'm going to type in sign. And this one's going to be a direction/location sign. And it's going to drop it right where I'm standing. But say this sign is actually across the street. I'm just going to move my crosshairs and update that point. So now it's where I want it to be. We're going to attach a photo. So I'm going to pick this one so I know what it looks like. Add. Now that photo is with this point forever and everyone can see it. So this is really cool because if that sign gets stolen, I know exactly what it used to look like and I can order a new one. I can even attach maybe the graphics file that I sent to the printer to order that new sign. So we have that historical reference again. We're going to do a park name. Public view for this sign, I don't really care to see it on a map for the public, so I'm going to say no. A lot of our layers have this public view yes or no question. Our dream is to have a public interactive map with a lot of these features on it. So if this is something that is internal use only, always say no. But if you are okay with sharing this feature with the public, say yes. So in the future, we can add that to the maps. All right, you can give it a status. I know that this one is existing. And we can give it a condition. So again, this is a filterable field, which is really helpful. We're going to say poor since the top one is coming off of the sign. We can get into specifics about the frame material and the surface in front of the sign. As we want to be more accessible, we want to know who can get to this sign and use it in the park. So this is good to know. Natural surface for this one. More details like dimensions or number of sides or panels and the last replacement date, and of course, descriptions or notes if you want to use those. I'll click submit. Right, and now I have my sign point. Let's do some cultural resources. So I'm going to click the ... and I'm going to change my base map to a terrain base map. So on top of this mountain behind me is actually a Civil War site. And if you see this linear feature to the left of the blue trail, it's a earthwork site, it's a breastwork. So I'm going to record that just so I know about it and my fellow rangers know about it. But I'm not necessarily wanting to share this information with the public. So I'm going to click the blue plus button. I'm going to show you a different way to collect. So you can click the blue plus button, or you can just press and hold a finger on the map. It's going to drop a pin, and you can say collect here. Just another way to do the same thing. So I'm going to type in cultural, and you're going to see cultural lines or areas. If you're looking for cultural points, just scroll down, and you'll see these brown icons. They're very specific, like grave sites, mounds, that kind of thing. So if you're looking for point features for cultural resources, that's how to find those best. For this, I want a linear feature. So I'm going to click this first option. And I'm going to use my terrain base map to map this out. So about right here, I'm going to add a point. And now I have my line feature. I'm going to say that this is public view no. I also will have to give it a park name because it's required. The historic association is Civil War. It is visible. I can give it a date, a description, negative impact. So there's some four-wheeler activity up here. So I'm going to say human activity damage. And under actions needed, I'm going to say needs protection from those four-wheelers. This last question called accessibility review, you'll see that on a few of our layers. If you think this feature is accessible by wheelchair and you want people going to this feature, you would say yes. And that tells our Access 2030 team to check this feature out next time they're at your park, so they can do an accessibility audit on that feature. For this one, I'm going to say no because it's an internal feature only. I'll submit that. And now I have that cultural line on my map. All right. Next up, we're going to edit an existing feature. So I'm going to click on the blue trail, and you'll see it's called the Sipsey Trail, and it is under construction if you look at the trail status. To edit an existing feature, you just click the pencil icon in the bottom left. Okay, so now I can edit the vertices of this trail, or I can extend it further, and that's what I want to do. So what's really cool about seeing all of these layers on one map is now I know exactly where that cultural resource is. so that I can plan my trail around it. I don't want the public going over there and messing with that resource. So I'm gonna plan my trail all the way around here. Maybe past the visitor center and then back to the trailhead. So if I scroll up, you'll see all of these features we like to collect about trails, like blaze color, what's allowed on the trail, and the surface. For this one, I know that I've already built this trail. I just got done. So now I'm going to change this trail status from under construction to open. And then I'm going to submit it. As soon as you do that, you email Leah and Andrew and you say, hey, we have a new trail that's open at our park. It's on One Smart Park. Can you add it to our park map? And we can add it to our statewide master trails layer, and I can add it to your park map, directly pulling the data from this app. So super quick content sharing. No need to go into Venza and download a GPX anymore. It's all super fluid. All right. Let's do a landscape feature. So maybe on this new section of the trail, I found a cave. So I'm going to just type in cave. This is under our landscape features layer. It's going to drop that cave there. I can attach a photo. We'll choose this one. A park name. Public view. Since this cave is right on my trail, I'm going to say yes. So now Leah knows she can add it to the park map because it's okay for the public to see that that's there. The condition is good. Any actions needed? Not today. Any threats or evidence I could write about? Maybe graffiti. And again, accessibility review. I'm going to say no since this is pretty rough terrain. And I'll submit that point. All right. We also have some pretty generic points that we like to call wildlife points and areas or plant points and areas. You'll see those at the top of the list. So you can use these things for anything that you have specific interest in. We see people using wildlife points to mark wild hog sightings or activities. In the field, we've seen wildlife areas, plant areas for maybe ginseng for an internal use, or maybe a wildflower pollinator garden for a public use. So just to give you an example of that, I'll click wildlife point. We're going to say it was over here. I'll give it a park name. We don't want the public to see this wild hog sighting, so we're going to say no there. You can give it a common name, scientific name, go into the type, whether it's native, non-native, etc. The count, if you see more than one, a status, if it's threatened, etc. Condition, habitat description, threats or evidence, actions needed, and notes. So the form for all four of these layers are pretty much the same. So just use them if you have a special project that aligns with these layers. All right, let's go into a little different direction with utilities. So we currently have potable water points and lines. We also have sewer points and lines and septic points and lines currently built out in our utilities data set. There's definitely more to be built out on that, so stay tuned for more layers. Last year at the park, we got a new water main. So let's add that in. I'm going to click here. I'm just going to type in water. You'll see a lot of things show up, but we're looking for that potable water force pressure line. So I'm here at the pump house, and it's going to run down this hill all the way to my meter, which is about here. On this water line, I can say that it's a main line. It is existing. It is now made of PEX. I can say it was installed last year or a last repair date, maybe. I can give it a diameter, color, position source. So we're going to say it's employee memory because we have a lot of maintenance staff that have been at our parks for a while, and a lot of this is stored in their memory, and we want to document it. So we're going to say that. You can also give notes about emergency contacts or maybe the owner or supplier. So if anything goes wrong, you'll have all of this data for all of your rangers at any time. So you don't have to call that maintenance staff on the weekend, etc. All right, so now we have that water line. And then let's add the meter box because it's not already there. So I'm going to type in water again. And we're going to use this potable water point. I'm going to say that it is a meter. It is existing. Again, I can tell it the supplier, the model, the storage capacity, how I got the position source, emergency contact, and any notes maybe about the key type, the key size, the number of turns, the depth, diameter, etc. Anything that might be handy if something ever went wrong. Also, if you are having new utilities put in at your park and they give you maybe a CAD file or a map, you can send that to Andrew and I, and we can help you load that into your map as well.
Yeah, and with that too, I wanted to show you guys, we have another video about kind of georeferencing your utilities. If you have blueprints that were made, maybe you've got an old file storage cabinet, you can take a photo just with your phone of these and scan them in and upload them to ArcGIS Online. Real quick, I'm going to steal the screen just to show you guys what that looks like. So again, if you just search TN State Parks JS on YouTube, you'll find all our videos. And we have this one, and basically you're adding, so this was an existing water system blueprint from 2007 that we were able to georeference to Bledsoe Creek. So you're trying to match it in here and get it right to the right spot, kind of drag and drop. And then once you have it in there, you can add a layer such as the utilities. See how it's matching up with the campground? We can see the schematics right there and the different water supply lines. And so you're able to kind of just drop these potable water points like Leah had, or the lines, and get all those systems connected together and basically got right off a blueprint. Yes, it might not be down to the exact inch, but this is far better than you had before. Now it's all in one smart park while you're out there. So while you're out in the field, when you're doing mapping a single trail or doing a wildlife check-in, you can have all this stuff pulled up on your phone in one place. So historically, we had everything kind of set up in a different map, a whole different project on your phone. You had to log into different systems. Now it's one place where you can log in and see all of these layers, statewide layers, together in one spot. So I'll turn it back over to Leah, but I just wanted to show you guys that because we're trying to do a little bit more with utilities, and I thought you guys would like it. Actually, one more thing before we steal before I have Leah pull back up. We were talking about cultural resources, and I know we've got Paige and Hannah and Nina on here. So I just wanted to show you guys real quick too. So if you're thinking cultural resources and wow, the state parks must have a ton of cultural resources documented or not. We're getting there. We've had I just wanted to show you, we're kind of trying to keep track of how the different layers are being used. So we've gotten about 143 cultural points documented so far, and some of the parks that have done the most of it are Montgomery Bell and Panther Creek. So it's not a ton of data that's out there. The Division of Archaeology with their 30,000 site records has a lot of information. Hopefully we'll get that information sharing, but maybe we'll set up a system where if we document a cultural resource, it creates a flow that emails the Division of Archaeology to give them a heads up that we've documented something, and we can figure out, hey, that maybe we can bring that back. Or if it's a Civil War related one, it goes over to Nina and she gets an email to check it out so that we can kind of all collaborate on this together. And if you go to the table on One Smart Park Online, you can kind of sort for cultural historic resource points, and you can kind of dive into what stuff, whether it's a historical association, the estimated dates, if it's visible versus buried. Just some cool information that we've got up there for you guys to start playing with. All right.
Yeah, and we have a question from Warren about new campground renovations. Yeah, so if you have those site plans that are finalized, you can send them our way and we can kind of mass upload them into your map. Or maybe you want to do it as they make progress, put those features online. So you can edit existing features. So if you see maybe a bathhouse that's changing locations or being demolished, you can click on that bathhouse and delete it, or say propose removal, that kind of thing. So hopefully you can start managing these assets over time. But if you need like a mass upload into our system, just let us know and we'll help you out.
Yeah, and we had another project from Dakota, which was about poached, illegally cleared areas and stuff around the boundary. I thought that'd be a really cool one for the miscellaneous stuff. When you get to that later, it might be a good way of documenting that.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and do miscellaneous. I'm going to change my base map back to default. So we highly recommend using any of our statewide layers if they meet your needs. But if in the rare case of something super particular or special to your park, you can use miscellaneous. So if you type in MISC, you'll see points, lines, and polygon options. This is what you can use if nothing else fits your needs. So like the example in the chat, we can use an area that's been cleared. And so basically now I have a polygon feature that I can give it a name and some notes about. Just a simple way if something you need is not already provided. We also look at this layer for ideas on what new layers we could build for the statewide. So maybe if it's helpful for your park, it'll be helpful for other parks. So we like to see these examples.
Yeah, so Dakota, if you were to mark the area that's been disturbed along your boundary, mark it there, send an email over to Bill or Adam or Brian over in Lands and Realty and say, hey, I put this in One Smart Park. This is the issue that I'm trying to bring up with legal. Will you help me with this and make sure our boundary is correct or things like that? So it's kind of this interdivisional coordination we're trying to have too. We're all kind of on the same team working together so you can get a nice quick data flows to central office without having to send this by email and stuff. And I think Leah might have mentioned it earlier too. Everybody's been using a lot of systems for a while. So whether it's Avenza or CalTopo, you might have documented a lot of stuff already. So if you have a bunch of Avenza points or something like that, you can send it over to us and we'll get it kind of formatted and stuck into One Smart Park in the right features, whether it's park assets or signage and things that you've documented before. So you don't have to lose that work, but now it's kind of like a shared collaborative thing.
All right, let's set some stuff on fire. So we're gonna click the blue plus button and I'm gonna plan out a prescribed fire. So I'm just typing fire and I'm gonna use that prescribed fire management layer. In the case that you ever have a wildfire at your park that you want to document, you can X out of this prescribed fire type and change it to wildfire here. So that's an option, just keep in mind. I know we've had a lot of those in the past year. For this
Yeah,
one, we're
and
going to
working
do,
with our chief ranger's office, we're going to update this form a little bit to have a couple notes. And if there is a wildfire or prescribed fire, you should also be documenting it in RMS for like legal and law enforcement pieces as well. So they're really curious on being able to gather that information. Historically, it's been done through emails back and forth through the parks, but this is a great way to start documenting any little wildfires, whether that camper just left his stove unattended during a gusty windstorm or something like that.
yeah, so if I was planning this out in the field, I would click dot, 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 start streaming. I'd walk that boundary. But for this case, I'm going to just really quickly draw one manually. So again, a cool example of seeing everything on one map is now I know that, when we do this prescribed fire, we probably need to close the Sipsey Trail this day so we don't have visitors walking into our fire. If you look at the form for this layer, the natural areas division helped us build this out. So it's It's pretty similar to a burn plan, and you can even attach your burn plan to your polygon if that's helpful. So again, use the fields that are helpful to you. And if you really want to get detailed, you can with this layer, like burn date, burn unit name, burn boss, permit number. You'll see that it automatically calculates your acreage of your unit and your fire line length, which is cool. Weather details if you want to record those, any kind of completion stuff like mop up, staff time, fire behavior, and personnel information. So again, this is really good for metrics, for IPPs, but also seeing a historic reference of what's happening at your park and if it's making a difference.
Yeah, and you can kind of treat it as like what Leah's done. This is the burn unit, the proposed area. You might have done this on your computer or on your phone ahead of time. And then when you go out in the field, you can adjust that polygon by doing start streaming and kind of reshape it to go around the area that was burned. And real quick on that, I'm going to steal the screen for a second to show you guys what some of those look like after they've done a bunch of burns. So over at Cedars of Lebanon, the Division of Natural Areas has been doing this for a while now. You can kind of see a lot of history kind of stacked on top of each other. So if I were to click this area, the pop-up's going to show me a bunch of different things. So we had a prescribed fire along the run trail that was done. Let's see. So Sam King has kind of gone in and brought in all the historical paper documents into this. So we do have a history of what's happened on the parks. So this one was actually, let's see, burn date. Not exactly sure on the burn. Yeah, 320. Actually, there was this month, so that was a more recent one. There's another polygon located underneath it. That was done back in 2017. So now we got that history. Two different polygons. You can kind of see a different shape. One was really focused to be within the trail. But you could, again, you could filter to be, I want to see all the ones that occurred in the last 2 years. And then my table would have all those, and I have a field for acreage. So then I could tally up how much acreage of our park have we burned in the last 10 years or something like that. So this is, again, this is a living history of your park. This is kind of day one for that. We're starting right here. And over, you can see a lot more burn units planned out over at Seven Islands. I know they have a lot of their burn units showing up too. So it's just it's a really cool way to start to do those. And then the last one I wanted to show you was back over at Montgomery Bell, where we had two little wildfires pop up. Really small, so your footprint can be really tiny. This is Eric went out and walked around the perimeter of where that burn was. And I know we haven't talked about it too much, but being able to attach photos is so great for documentation. This is the actual area that was burned. So it's tiny, but now you know maybe some rare species is going to pop up here because it's fire enabled and needed that. But also just good to document that over time.
All right. Let's get into some search and rescue. Okay. So we have a layer called Park Assets. And within that, we have several search and rescue specific features. So this is really helpful for documenting these areas or points or access roads and routes for your park so that if other rangers are coming in from other parks to help out, they can see this data and know where those things are too. We're also working with CalTopo to find a way to import these features into CalTopo maps when there's like big search and rescue efforts happening. So let's do a landing zone. And we're gonna say that it's on top of my neighbor's house over here. And then I can give it any kind of descriptions or conditions. And in the notes, this is where I would write maybe if I need access to private property or maybe the phone number of a medical person in the county that I might need to contact for the helicopter. Any kind of details that might be helpful for search and rescue, I would add them to this form. I'll submit that here. So if you get this error, it's because two of my required fields were left empty. So I'm going to click View, and it's going to show me which ones I missed. So I just need to know what park I'm at and if this is public. And this is not going to be public because it's just for internal operations. All right, so it's going to submit that landing zone. But I need a way to get to that landing zone. So I'm going to add in an access route through this private property. So if I type in SAR again, I'll see the bottom, it's a linear feature. And I'm going to walk this little trail all the way to the landing zone. All right. And now it's going to ask me what kind of route this is. So I need to know what kind of vehicle or bike, or maybe I'm walking this. How can I access this route? So I'm going to say this is the dirt bike trail. That's the fastest way I can get down this route. I'm going to say it has natural surface. And then the access description is, again, you might put some property owner information, gate codes if it's got a gate, the type of vehicle they suggest for this, any kind of seasonal conditions you can add in the notes. I'm going to click submit. All right, and now my rangers, but also rangers from other parks that are helping me on this search and rescue, know exactly where my access routes and search and rescue features are.
Awesome. And if you guys
Yeah.
would like, I can show you. Do you have more on search and rescue to show?
Nope, I think that's it.
Awesome. I'll show you kind of a real world example. Um, so over at Fire Gizzard, Jason Reynolds has helped us out, but he had already been documenting a lot of this using Avenza maps. And so the red here is access routes. So he's gotten landowner agreements to go through these properties. Maybe they're just small roads or going through timber company or something like that to get down to the Fire Gizzard Trail. And being an 8-mile trail, not always the best thing to have to respond by hiking 4 miles to get down there. So he's marked the extraction points, these are access points through these little red arrows. These are the roads that he would take, but even more, he's done things like document where there's a gate. And so on that gate point, we'll see a bunch of things come up. What you could do is mark, hey, this is where the gate key is located. It's at this visitor center or this maintenance shop, or this person has the access codes and stuff to that, so you know who it is to have that. Um, what you can also do too is what he's done is marked along these cliff bands. So it might not be the same for everybody. Every park's a little bit different, but you might be the one responding to a nearby park. So it's always good for you to know. Um, so he's got a bunch of little dots around these cliff bands. So you might be like, why would you need to know that? Well, people are attracted to water and waterfalls all the time and creeks and think they can bushwhack down to different areas. You'll notice that Leah has brought in all the waterfalls listed from the Tennessee Landforms website. So even more than we have documented on our park maps. These are like seasonal flows and stuff like that. Also, if you're just visiting a park on your leisure time, you can open up One Smart Park yourselves as a park ranger and see these features too. So if you are curious about it. But these little tiny dots are kind of breaks in the cliff. So those are really helpful for people to know. Like that's how you get down to the water. Or at Fall Creek Falls, they might have designated rappel routes because they've set up like actual metal hardware on the cliffs to get down to a certain area. And so if you've done search and rescue stuff in the past or responded, you might have done stuff with CalTopo. So you can always get us that information, or the whoever was doing it at the command center can get us that info. So just tell them to send that over to us, and we can kind of document what was used in the past for that rescue. And I was thinking recently too, like even at Long Hunter, I know we got Bill on here. You got 44 islands or so for Long Hunter. And maybe you're the one that's responding to some of these. Maybe it'd be nice to know what's the fastest access route on water to each of these islands. So maybe you would document what boat ramp you would go to, what side of the lake it is, and draw a little line connecting to each point so you know that's the fastest way for me to get from my park office out to one of these islands if I ever needed to. Then again, your boat might just be docked in the one place all the time, but still pretty cool. While we're on here too, I'll just show a couple things that we can do. So One Smart Park is supposed to be like the standardized way of doing things, but you can go bigger. So we did a random sampling grid of Long Hunter to set up wildlife game cameras. And that's what you see are these little square dots. We kind of split the park up into, I don't know, 150 different grids and then did a random sample number generator to pick out those grids. And then they've installed camera traps to help document wildlife, recreation, all that kind of thing on those areas. So that's where the science starts to come in. And once you got a grasp of how to use GIS, you can kind of take it to a couple more steps further. All right, Lee, you got some other ones to show?
Um, the last one was trail and event issues or damages, but you can show it on here if you want to.
Sure. So one thing you'll notice, so we've got a lot of layers on here, our statewide layers, but we have more than that. So if you go down, you can see the accessible assets that the Access 2030 team has documented. Turn those on. They haven't been to this park yet, so bad example. But there's some historical things. Like if you've been working with me the last 4 years, you probably had to do stuff with vending machines or visitation trackers, electrical vehicle charging stations, and before me and Leah's time, grills, picnic tables, and all of those other things. So we have all that data. So if you'd like to turn it on, you can. Water access points comes directly from TWA. You'll see a little point showed up there when I turn that on. And so that's beyond our park boundaries, all sorts of different things. And if it's grayed out, that means you need to zoom down to a closer level. A couple other little things I'll show you before I dive into the trail and issues is you got some imagery options here. We can change this imagery so that you can see things with leaf on or off. So we had Dakota who was talking about, I think maybe Tio Fuller. So if you had an issue going on, maybe you'd want to use the different imagery options to look at your boundaries and such. And if your boundary ever doesn't look right, just shoot me and Leah an email. It's something we're always working on, trying to clean up and make sure it looks the way it's supposed to. But TDOT flies over the state and they have imagery from 2020. So we can, and that was leaf off. So it gets a little better look beyond that. You can also turn on NAPE imagery, which is another option. We have color infrared. And some of these are a little bit slower to load. There you go. That helps you differentiate between like developed and undeveloped land and water areas. And same with the NDVI, it really kind of highlights those. So you can find some good uses. If you want to look really for those cultural resources that are way out in the woods, let's turn one of these on, like this dark multi-directional hillshade. If it shows up, you get some really cool, crisp terrain imagery, terrain hillshade LiDAR models of these areas. So you might see some cool features in here that would be interesting to you. And we were talking about the trails and events issues and damages. So we kind of group these into the same thing. Basically, it's a trail damage or something caused by an event vendor. So at Bicentennial Mall, they had this happen a bunch. But back between 2016 and 2019, a lot of you had to document trail issues to help us figure out how much money we would need to repair all our trails. So that's something that's still in the works even today. But here's that data, what that looks like. Thousands of points of trail issues. I think, let's see how many were documented. 1,861 trail issues. So you could filter down to your park to look at those if you're still interested in that data. They got categories such as if there are safety issues, and that kind of changes the symbology. If they're no longer relevant to you or they've been fixed, you can one by one mark these and edit them to mark as deleted or completed, or you can use this to create new ones. So if I were going to edit and I wanted to do this from the computer, because we haven't showed you this side yet, I can click on the point that I'm interested in. It's going to pull up the same exact form that Leah was showing you on the phone. And so it's great. You got pending. If you mark it as complete, it'll disappear from the map, but it will still be in the table forever. It's just a way of cleaning up the visual. All these different issues, priorities, safeties, trails, tons of info. But what's awesome is we preserve the photos that were taken even back, like 5 years ago or even more at this point. So it's pretty cool. That's just the way we're trying to do things now is kind of create that data set to be living here for the long term so that you could continue to access it. And if you were trying to make a new one, create a new feature. So again, I can go to edit. I can either select something to update it like I did here or create. So if I wanted to say the word trail, get all sorts of fun things. So we get the little black boxes are from the park assets layer. We have the damages and issues here. We got cultural historic line, so a historic trail. Maybe you want to show the Trail of Tears going through your property. I know we were interested in that for Devil's Backbone. And trail planning. So actually, I don't know if it was Trail of Tears or if it was just the Natchez Trace we were trying to show there, the old historic roadbed, and then the trail planning. So you can kind of draw these out here. If I was going to do a new trail at Savage Gulf, I can click this and then start mapping it out. Double click to finish as it instructed me there. And then it's going to, in a second, pull up the form. And that's where you get into the drop downs. The little asterisk means that it's required as well. So you get the trail status and mark these things as proposed, decommissioned, and all that information is going to go right over to me and Leah so we can update your trail map. Obviously, it's not going to magically show up on your printed trail map, but the next time you request new prints, we'll have that in for you. All right, before we wrap up, I wanted to ask if anyone has any questions on this. Anything else you'd like to show, Leah?
Nope, I think we're good.
Awesome. But yeah, so the idea is we're creating a living history of our parks. We're creating a collaborative space where we can all work together, and your ideas are what creates this. So we're going to take Dakota's idea about, illegal border boundary things going on. Maybe that'll become its own separate layer to document things. We're working with the Chief Ranger's office on other things. And David Withers, I know you stuck with us to the end, hoping to hear about rare species, but we're not quite there yet, working with the Division of Natural Areas, but we'd love to, hopefully in the next couple months, we're going to have rare species data showing up for our park rangers so that you can go out and revisit these sites and document the populations and feed that information back to natural areas and kind of get that loop going. All right. We did want to mention that there is an offline map capability, and I think Leah can show you that real quick. I've got to hop off to go to a next meeting, but I'll have her show it real quick and explain. We just have a little technical bug going on with it right now, but it has been working for a long time. Really great for parks that don't have a lot of service, whether you're up around Reelfoot Lake or in the backcountry at Fall Creek Falls. The offline maps is really, really helpful. So thank you very much for joining us today.
All right, to create an offline map, before you head out in the field while you're on cell service or Wi-Fi, just go to your map list, click the ... next to One Smart Park and choose Add Offline Area. It's going to pull up a map with a little bounding box, and you can zoom into your park, and you might say, oh, that bounding box is too small. So I'm going to go down to level of detail. Right now it's room. I'm going to change it to small building. And now if I zoom out, you'll see that my box is big enough to fit my boundary. And I'll just click download area. It'll start that download, and once it's ready, you can go out into the field and use it just as you would on cell service or Wi-Fi. It's going to say download failed right now because of that bug Andrew mentioned, but it should be fixed within the next week. So if you need an offline map, just wait till next week probably, and it should be functioning then. All right.